So back when I was in college here in Germany, me and a few friends of mine were invited to a house party one weekend. It wasn't sold as being some crazy all-night rave or anything like that, but since the drinking age is much lower than in the US, there'd been a lot of beer, and it was certain to get pretty wild. In light of that, me and my friends were really excited. We knew that there were going to be girls, and being the young single guys that we were, we knew that it'd be a great place to meet some potential dates and, do some flirting. We arrived stinking of cologne, wearing terrible button-up shirts with our beer in tow, and then we set up in the corner and just sort of awkwardly were drinking amongst ourselves for a while. But then the more we drank, the more confident we got, and slowly but surely we started to mingle. One of my friends started putting it on with a few different girls, and at first it was funny to watch him struggle. He was our designated driver for the evening, meaning that he hadn't been drinking and was therefore still very nervous and pretty clumsy. But then, we saw that the attraction to one of the girls was very much reciprocated. We were happy for him, but as much as I'd like to tell you that we were mature and gave him some space, that wasn't the case at all. We kept harassing him and his potential date, playfully of course, but it was still unwelcome. Eventually, he told us to leave them alone because we were ruining his chances with her, and only then did we finally respect his wishes and just leave him in peace. We were pretty drunk by that period, so we just went off and entertained ourselves so he could get some space. Now, a little time goes by and we start wondering where our sober friend and his lady are. We looked around everywhere for them, checking all of the bedrooms in the house, but all were occupied with people drinking or smoking, and our friend seemed to be nowhere to be seen. But then, in the process of looking for him, we found the girl's friends, and after asking where the new couple was, we discovered that they'd gone out to my friend's car for some alone time together. We knew exactly what they were up to, and although the girl's friends made us promise to leave them alone, we just had to get a picture or two for posterity, being immature and whatnot, you know the deal. I fully admit that our plan made us total a-holes and that violating someone's intimate privacy is not only wrong but also completely against the law, to be honest, and we didn't end up taking pictures or video of anyone that night, as you'll soon come to learn. In order to maintain the element of stealth, only one of us would creep up towards my friend's car before secretly recording whatever was going on inside. That was the plan, at least. And that person wasn't me, so the rest of us sort of held back at the party to make it look like we weren't doing exactly what it is we were doing. We talked to the girl's friends, kept them occupied trying and failing to flirt with them until we started to grow impatient. All our friend with the phone had to do was run up to the car, snap a few pictures, and then run back with his prize. But longer and longer went by and there was no sign of our friend with the camera phone. Unable to wait any longer, I went outside to look for him, but instead of secretly filming our friend and his girl in the car, I found him sitting on the curb with no car in sight. He was on the phone with someone, so I figured shutting up and listening would get more answers than asking questions he wouldn't respond to. As I listened, I worked out the call was obviously a serious one, and by the end of it, I was almost certain that number one, he'd been crying, and number two, that the call sounded like it had been with the police. I asked him where our friend with the car was, and he just shook his head and told me we need to leave. When he looked up at me, it became clear that yes, he had been crying, but why? He didn't tell me until we took a taxi back to his apartment, and over a few more beers and some cigarettes, he told me what happened. He tried to take some pictures as planned, but when he got to our friend's car, he found him in the passenger seat alone. His head was in his hands, and he was in this terrible state with tears streaming down his face. My friend with the phone kept asking what happened with the girl, over and over, but our friend with the car wouldn't say anything. Wouldn't or couldn't, I don't know. But my phone friend walks around to the passenger side to climb in and talk to him with some privacy, and he asks again, what happened with the girl? And our friend with the car just points to the back seat. And that's when he realizes that our friend isn't alone in the car. He never was. And that under the blanket on the back seat, he recognized the shape of a person. It was the girl that he'd been with, and she wasn't breathing. But when my friend with the phone asked what had happened, car friend just kept saying, I don't know. At first, he maybe thought that the girl had had a seizure or maybe a freak heart failure, and he kept saying to call 112, which is the emergency number here in Germany for fire or medical. But my friend with the car, he wouldn't call. He kept saying things like, "Just wait a minute, I need to think," and other things to delay my other friend. My friend with the phone said that he jumped out of the car out of instinct, realizing that he was getting his DNA and all of those things onto what was now the scene of the crime, being very paranoid. There was no other reason why he would refuse to call the emergency number or try to delay in any way, or why he'd cover her body instead of just running to get help or maybe even trying to get her out. My friend with the phone then told the other to get out of his car, but he wouldn't. He just suddenly started the engine and drove off before my friend could stop him. He then was faced with a choice: run and get us, which is what he really wanted to do because he was completely freaked out, or do the right thing, be a man and just call the 110 number instead, which is not the number for medical, it's the number for the police. We later discovered that the friend with the car had somehow suffocated this girl, although we never found out exactly how. He planned to drive into the River Main to take his own life and hide what he'd done, but he couldn't go through with it and was found by the police and subsequently arrested. He pled guilty to everything to try and get as little time in prison as possible, and for a while it was a big story, but now for most people it's half a forgotten memory, really. When I recall it, my mind always seemed to land on one specific thing my friend said when he was in his apartment afterwards. He said realizing that he sat in the car with a dead body, as well as the killer themselves, was the scariest feeling he'd ever felt. It's the kind of moment that would top anybody's list of their life's scariest moments. But he said that just seconds later he was faced with something that was somehow even more terrifying to him. He was terrified that one of the dead girl's friends was going to ask him where she was, and how he wouldn't be able to tell her. I just tried to be the best friend I could to him and get him away from the party before his worst fear came true. But I also understand how selfish it was of us not to warn anyone what had happened. Those girls might have carried on partying for a while, not knowing that one of their close friends was gone forever. If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.